We would like to continue now with the session of the political party leaders that are contending for the next elections, and I now have the honor to ask the head of Yesh, Atid, MK Yair Lapid, to speak. Hello and good afternoon. I would like, with your permission, to start with something that has nothing to do with the topics at hand. My friend and colleague Uri Orbach passed away several hours ago. He will be missed by myself and others because he was a good man, a funny man, a caring man. And there was something rare about him. He had his own voice. He only thought the way he thought, and he made us rethink things. So I would now like to extend my condolences to Michal, his wife, and their children. Next month, in the American Congress, an empty suit will come up on stage. The Israeli Prime Minister won't be there in that empty suit because an Israeli Prime Minister, a true Israeli Prime Minister who only sees the interest of Israel, would not have made this speech. He would not have made such a speech, such an address, because for that reason only, it will not be the only reason for Congress to refrain from sanctioning Iran, and Iran will make another giant leap forward on their way to becoming a nuclear threshold state. Because if it weren't for this empty suit speech, a bipartisan bill would have been proposed that would have been accepted by the 24th of March and would have allowed the Iranian sanctions to be put in place. But once Netanyahu said he would be making this unnecessary speech that is harming democracy, one of the two people signing this bill, Robert Menendez, who used to be the head of the Senate's Foreign Committee, said he will not be proposing it. All we wanted was in that proposal. It is supported by both parties, Democrats and Republicans, that would have hit the Iranians hard on the head, and such a bill would not have left them any choice. They would have had to say that they would not go forward with the agreement with the West, and then the United States would have to stop the Iranian nuclear program, even at the price of military action. And of course the White House would have vetoed Menendez, but if it weren't for that speech, that unnecessary and harmful speech, we would most certainly with the help of AIPAC and others, friends of Israel, we would have had a 2/3 majority in order to topple this. But once Netanyahu said that he is accepting the Republicans' invitation to speak in Congress, he forced the Democrats to defend their president, and then the majority became passed. And then Netanyahu knows this. Netanyahu knows he has now removed the final obstacle on the Iranians' way. He knows it well because senators and ambassadors and emissaries are all talking to him, calling him up, and they all come back empty-handed. In my last visit in Washington, I sat with Joe Biden, the Vice President, and we talked in the White House, heart to heart. I don't agree with Bibi on many things, said Biden, but we have been friends for the last 30 years. This friend has decided to be absent on the day of Bibi's speech, and that is a very harsh statement. But Netanyahu refuses to listen, because there's only one person he listens to these days, the person who makes the polls for him. And the person who runs the polls for him told him that his voters like it that he fights with Obama. So he said to himself, I'll make the speech. I'll win the elections. Afterwards, I'll have to work it out somehow with the Americans. You will not work it out with the Americans, Mr. Netanyahu. The Americans don't work that way. I know that you think that you're the only one who knows Americans, but it's not true, not for a long time. Your view of the United States is outdated, irrelevant, and causes damage to the state of Israel. The America you know is a Republican America from the 1970s and 80s. White America, Nixon's and Reagan's America, without African Americans, without Hispanics, without protesters. The America you know simply has gone. It is no longer. The America you know don't have senators like Bernie Sanders, a warm Jew who was once a volunteer on the kibbutz and the head of the veteran committee in the Senate, who was the first to announce that he will not be there to listen to your speech. The America that you know doesn't have senators like Robert Menendez, a true friend of Israel's, who sat with me at the Knesset several months ago to tell me the depth of his commitment to stop the Iranian nuclear program. And if it weren't for this huge the way he hurt the American president, he would not have taken back his proposal. And that is Netanyahu. He is the one who is bringing upon us an agreement that will make Iran a nuclear threshold state. That is a Greek tragedy. Everything he has warned everyone against for years will ultimately take place because of him. A Middle Eastern nuclear race, a balance of powers, or the absence of a balance of powers, and a cold shoulder from the Americans. Because a responsible Prime Minister that does not gamble at the casino over our security would have gone down a completely different path. He would not have bet on Mitt Romney in 2012 because that was very irresponsible. He would have talked with the White House until the very last minute, covertly and overtly, about the nuclear program. They would have such a Prime Minister would have made the Americans define what the red line is in terms of violating an agreement, so that we know what to do. He would have underscored the fact that Israel does not have a strategic alliance with half of America, but with all of America, Democrats and Republicans alike. Because it's allowed. It is allowed for a Prime Minister, an Israeli Prime Minister, to go against the United States President over a program, over something like the nuclear program, but it has to be smart. It has to be done behind the scenes, rather than becoming a crisis in the relationship between Israel and the United States, and not to get the situation that Channel 2 reported last night, whereby the American administration has decided to take Israel out of the inner circle and to exclude it from the reports of what is happening in the negotiations with Iran. And despite their denial, the United States don't want to don't want to share the information with Netanyahu because they no longer trust him or his motives. Unlike his usual routine, Netanyahu cannot blame anyone else, the military or the Mossad or other ministers, because it's his own failure and his alone. He had one final chance to create a step with the Americans, and he sabotaged it because he was worried that Bennett will get some more votes. And before our very eyes, Benjamin Netanyahu, the statesman, has disappeared, and replacing him is this empty suit. For one unnecessary, reckless speech, we now no longer have a reason, the only reason, why Benjamin Netanyahu should be the Israeli Prime Minister. Instead of going and speaking in Congress, what Netanyahu should have done was to ask the Israeli media to his house at 8 o'clock in the evening and to speak out to the Israeli public. He should have looked us in the eye and admitted that he has failed. that he has put in years of efforts to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear threshold nuclear state, and has invested billions of shekels in unnecessary training and in preparation for operations that will never take place, and has neglected the leadership of this nation, and ultimately has failed. You have failed, Mr. Netanyahu. You have failed as a prime minister, and you must take responsibility and go back home to Caesarea. Because if it weren't for the Iranian issue, Netanyahu would have gone home years ago, in any other area. And thus, and this is something that his party also admits, he's a resounding failure, because in his term in office the gaps between the rich and poor have become larger, the survivors of the Holocaust have been forgotten, an entire generation has broken under the burden of housing costs, and the only reason he was re-elected once and again was because he was marketed as Mr. Security. And now it turns out that on the security front, just like in any other, Netanyahu is a complete and utter failure. Unlike all of his empty promises, he did not topple Hamas. I sat there in the political cabinet during Protective Edge, so nobody can sell me stories. We all know that in the absence of a political campaign, the next round with the Palestinians or the Hamas is just a matter of time. The number of terror attacks coming out of Judea and Samaria is increasing. Netanyahu also has failed to cooperate with the moderate states, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, even though they do see us as potential partners against the radical Islam, ISIS, and so on. And for one election speech, he has now turned Iran against us, has in fact turned Iran into a nuclear threshold state. Over the last few years, I spent my entire time, not most of my time, but my entire time, by solving problems that Netanyahu has let go of. I don't even know what's worse, the legend that he is Mr. Security, or the legend, the myth that he is Mr. Economy. We have been working hard solving the economic crisis he left us with the huge deficit he left us with. It wasn't easy, but we managed to get the country out of the mud, out of the crisis, and my party has managed to decrease the number of ministers, because that money should go back to the kindergartens and not to drivers and chauffeurs of prime ministers. We brought the core studies into the ultra-Orthodox market, the ultra-Orthodox education system. We have had the ultra-Orthodox integrated into the labor market, because we don't think that they should be unaware of how to work. And we have taken care of the Holocaust survivors. We gave them free medications. We gave them 3,600 shekels into their accounts, because it is not enough just to talk about the Holocaust on the day of the Holocaust Remembrance Day in brilliant English. You also need to take care of those people who have survived that hell, that inferno. On January 1st, the budget should have passed. In that year, when we had Protective Edge without raising taxes, it should have been the most social budget ever proposed in years, with more than 10 billion shekels more to social areas like health and education. On January 1st, we should have taken 190,000 elderly, changed their benefits, and brought them up from below the poverty line. These are the people you see going through the garbage. We had a solution for them. 4 billion shekels were supposed to go into the health system in order to prevent the collapse we are seeing. But Netanyahu stopped the budget from taking place. And why? Not because it was bad, but because it was good. Because he was worried that each and every Israeli citizen will feel a real difference, a real good difference in the pocket. That is his way, because he has no plan, no idea, no suggestion or proposal on how to improve life in Israel. His way of maintaining office is to do everything in his power to prevent other people's plans from being successful. But it won't work this time, because we're not fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for Zohar and Eden, who I met in Rishon LeZion, and told me that if they really do have a 240,000 shekel discount, they will be able to get their first apartment. And we're fighting for Dvorah, who did not cut a single hair of her beautiful hair since she was released from the ghetto, and now she's getting free medications and higher benefits. And we're fighting for Aaron, a young ultra-Orthodox man who 4 years ago did not know maths or English and is now an outstanding fighter in the IDF and is already taking exams to go into college. These are the people that this country should be working for. These are the people that we are fighting for. Thank you very much.